If you think that being corrected in your daily job by thousands of people shouting at you that you're a stronger person than I am. I mean, the thing is, I think we have to accept that criticism comes in all forms and is part of every job. It's one of those where you can't get things wrong and then not expect to be criticized, I think is what I would say in any job, anywhere. And then if you think that the decision that they made potentially at the highest level could cost 60, 70 million pounds, it's a big deal, right? I'm not saying people aren't immune to making mistakes, which is why they need as much support as they can get, and they're not necessarily getting from the current setup. When was the last time you made a mistake at work and thousands of people pointed at you and abused you verbally? I think it varies, right? I mean, the point is that ultimately they have put themselves in that position. They know it comes with the job, and criticism is there because generally people get things wrong, right? We'd all love to have criticism fed back in the most useful manner. Unfortunately, you're in a stadium full of 60,000 people. That generally comes as noise or online in this day and age. The point being is that there should be an organization there to help these people, and there should be VAR should be making the right decisions. And we've seen this season that it doesn't necessarily make the right decisions all of the time, because football is subjective in terms of the decisions that we make. It's a difficult place to be, but you can't expect these people not to have criticism when they're in the role that they're in. It's unfortunate, but if you make a decision that gets the team relegated and that costs them, or fails to qualify in fourth place and that costs them £60 million, and it's ultimately your decision, I'd expect to be criticised. Is the opposite way of looking at it. I'd rather that criticism came behind closed doors from my boss and all of those things, but you're in the public eye. You're going to get criticised. It's unfortunate, but that's people have to express their opinions, right? And I think the last part is throw things at you. I think what I would say with that is those people should be immediately ejected from the stadium and never allowed back in, right? That's the answer to that. A bit like footballers diving, that should be a free game ban. That's the way we're going to change things. That's the way we're going to protect referees, by allowing them to make the right decisions on the pitch by using the technology, by changing the rules to make it easier to use the technology, and then by punishing people the right way. That includes referees and linesmen and assistants. The punishment at the moment is you get relegated down to a different league, and then all of a sudden you're back doing the same things. That is, if I made decisions that cost people that much money in my job, I'll be out the door, right? That's the thing. It's unfortunate. We can't protect everybody against everything. These team talks don't seem to help me very much. If anything, I think they make it worse. Right. England duty begins. If I had the kind of after game inspection that every referee gets in a single week, you quit your job in a heartbeat. Yeah, quite possibly. I'd hope to improve at my job if I was being reviewed after every game, and we don't see the improvement. That's take it yourself out of the referee position. If you go and watch football every week and you'd never ever see an improvement from the referees, and I get that a lot of people will always think it's a penalty for their team or an offside against something, right? Subjective, I get it, but if there's enough neutrals who watch football who comment on decisions that are incorrect, and it's not down to bias or anything else, if you don't ever improve at your job, I would be out of a job as well. I wouldn't get to quit. I'd be sacked, right? And that's the point. If I wasn't performing well enough, and people, I'm definitely not the only one who thinks some of these referees are not up to where they need to be. It's unfortunate, but that's the nature of every job, every person, every role, right? Is you will always hire people into a job who turns out to be a bit shit at that job. So if the evidence is there, the flip side of that coin is why are they still in a job? Again, comes back down to protecting those people, allowing them to improve and all of those things. And that's the job for the organizations behind it. I mean, equally, I don't have the option of so my job is making sure people get paid, right? I don't have the option of having someone sweep up behind me and say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do that. I've just got to get it right? So until the referees are perfect, unlike the players and everyone else in the world, abusing them is just, it's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is the technology is there to allow people to get better at their jobs, right? And is there to give them a bit of a safety blanket to protect them. And it's not being used that way because it doesn't help. So it's just the nature of all of it is we're not doing it well enough. And that can be said for players, for media, for the technology. I abuse the technology. I would argue that we should use VAR more. I would argue that it should be used for the obvious things, like did the ball come off a defender or an attacker for a goal kick or a corner? Right? Easy enough to do, right? And I think if people see that it's making those correct decisions, they're going to get behind it more because there's some positivity coming out of it. We didn't concede a last-minute goal at a corner because it wasn't a corner. The difficult thing in football is that every decision is objective. It's possibly down to bias. It could be down to the angle, the camera angle that you're looking at it from. And then 2 weeks later or a day later, you see on social media a different camera angle that shows something different. All of it is going to be reviewed to the absolute nth degree. So we need to protect the people who are making those decisions. But also over the course of a season, we need to see that they are getting better at their jobs. If I was crap at my job, I'd have action to remove me from my job, right? I'd have the opportunity to improve. I'd be given support to try and improve, and then I'd be let go, right? So I just think from our point of view, we can't protect people from everything. And that's the thing. Equally, let's use David Coote as the example, right? I appreciate the circumstance was an unusual one, right? But I refuse to believe that none of his colleagues, none of his bosses, all of those people didn't understand what was going on with him in those circumstances, right? He wasn't put on a Liverpool game for such a long period, right? Which means there was obviously signs that they knew these things, right? So I just think as a whole, they haven't helped themselves as well as, and you can't tarnish everyone with one brush. What I'm saying is it's not necessarily the individuals, it's the organization, it's the whole of football needs to be looked at. And if the rules make it impossible to use technology, then we should change the rules to make it easier. I don't think we're going to see eye to eye on this one, OLP. I'm going to be honest with you. But it's the individuals who get the abuse and insults and throw things at them. Yeah, but at no point have I said the abuse and the throwing things is on, right? That's the only way that's going to change is by throwing those people out of football matches or banning them on social media. But bearing in mind the things that don't get banned on social media, this is so far down on the list, right? Rightly or wrongly. It's not going to change. The only thing that can help that change is by protecting them or by giving them the tools to do their jobs without making mistakes. And that's also impossible. It's not my attitude, right? If I go to the football, I don't hurl abuse at anyone ultimately, because it's just not who I am, right? But there are people who it is, right? That's what they live for. That's the problem. Is there are people in the world who the only enjoyment they get is that Saturday afternoon at the football, right? And it means so much to them that those sorts of things, the things they wouldn't do in everyday life. They wouldn't go to the co-op and shout at the woman behind the till because she gave her £3 coins instead of £4 coins, right? They wouldn't hurl all of that abuse. Unfortunately, some of them still would, but for the most part, they wouldn't do that. But at the football, they feel like they can. So that's the thing that has to change. It's not my attitude. I can't change that. There's nothing other than sitting in the stadium and shouting at the person who's shouting at the referee. But that is a group thing. That has to be everyone doing it, right? It's a bit like the whole racism thing at football, and throwing people out for making the chance is absolutely the right thing for singing songs and hurling abuse is absolutely the right thing to do, right? But it takes people around them to stand up and do that, right? My feeling is it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better by the referee association being better, the FA being better, the players being better, the referees and the officials being better, and supporters being better. It's never going to change. Your attitude is the part of the game, the refs sign up for it. I mean, some of that is true, right? Unfortunately, it is. At this moment in time, it is. Unless the authorities make changes, it's not going to change. It's not down to it's not down to the individuals to make that change unless they're the ones hurling the abuse or they're the ones sitting near someone hurling the abuse, right? But the whole thing has got to change. It's not just one person. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, referees do sign up for it. The best thing referees can do is no one sign up for it and not have football. But then they'll just replace it entirely with VAR. And equally, at this moment in time, why wouldn't we replace it entirely with VAR? I mean, we can make it more like American football. We can have 2-minute breaks between each passage of play. We can have loads more adverts. It's win-win. Oh, God, I'm going to lose to Turkey. We just don't like playing at Wembley, I think, is the problem here. Although I still don't know if this is Wembley. I should check. It would be worse than American football at that moment in time. And at that point, you would have 30 seconds of play and 2 minutes of crap. Yeah, maybe that's where we're heading. Oh, my Lord. Boys. And that's a better outcome than coping with the fact that referees are human, really with attitude. It's not. I mean, some of that was in jest, OLP. But what I would say is that what's going to change it, and this is part of the unfortunate thing. The thing that's going to change it is that the people who currently go to the football will likely be priced out of going to the football, right? Because prices are still going to keep going up and keep going up and keep going up, and a lot of the people who go to the football work in sort of lower paid jobs, and therefore it will be a class thing that changes it. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the society we live in. Or it will be that generations change, right? I mean, my parents' were racists. Ultimately, right? Or because that's the society that they grew up in. I don't think they were shouting at people on the street and stuff, but they were part of a society where it was accepted, right? My parents less so, me far less so. hopefully my nieces and nephews even less, right? But that's the nature of it. Takes time to change, and maybe people growing up in society where things are different, it changes. But again, it's not a case of humans making mistakes. They make mistakes. The point is that if the technology is there to help the mistakes be filtered out, then we should use it to its fullest. If not, how are we ever going to help these people? Because the people who are going to those stadiums are the ones that are hurling abuse, throwing objects, and they do get banned, right? But they're being replaced by someone else who will do it. That's the thing. If the upper classes are able to control themselves, why can't the working classes? And I'm a child of a mechanic and a bank check. I'm working class. Yeah, but it's not... It's, again, like everything, it's not all people in a particular class, right? I'm working class, right? My old man worked in a factory. I think the point is that the society we live in is, this is acceptable, right? And that only changes by society changing or by punishment, right? That educational punishment, that's it. A bit like everything in life, really. Is it right to abuse people? No. Does it happen? Yes. Should those people be chucked out of a football stadium? Probably. However, the problem you've got is what happens when they get chucked out of a football stadium and it was down to a horrendous decision, and it proves later to be classed as a horrendous decision. I'm not saying the abuse is correct, but that's the outlet, right? All right, which is what I'm doing. I'm educating about the issue, change society one person at a time. Well, as I said earlier, I don't think you and I are going to see eye to eye on it. I do feel like the PGMOL, that's their name, right, have the opportunity to make it better, and they haven't taken it. And the last 4 years, there hasn't been a significant enough improvement for people to get behind it. That's the problem, is you need people to buy in, like anything. And people can't buy in because... And also because football's so tribal. Let's look at a different issue, right? Football ticket prices. Every football fan would say that the ticket prices are too high, right? And they are. If every football club's fan team together, work together, they could probably change it, right? But the only way that's going to change is also footballers not being paid so much. Look at football shirts. In the last 10 years, the price of football shirts have gone from 40, 50 pounds to 80, 100 pounds. And that's not inflation, right? That's just the nature of greed. They still cost the same amount of money to make in a factory in China. It's just, it's just the nature of where we are, where football fans, if they could, should club together and say, you know what, I'm not going to buy that to support my football team. If football fans wanted to do the right thing with ticket prices, they should still go to the football, and they should not buy beer, they should not buy pies, they should not buy hot chocolates, they should not buy shirts. They should cut out the other income sources, but it's at the detriment of the one thing that they truly believe in and live for a lot of the time. And that's the problem, is as always, there's strength in numbers, and unfortunately football is so tribal that you can't agree on we can't agree on anything. It's unfortunate, but that's the nature of where we live. Until people can change things, or until players aren't paid the kind of money they're paid, TV rights aren't sold for the kind of money they're sold, football prices are always going to go up. And how many people can't afford to put the heating on, can't afford to feed their children, but do go to the football every week? So it's such a weird situation with football, because it's unlike anything else. I am a fan. I do know that, but I manage not to blame the referees for my team's failings. What if your team's failings are specifically down to the referee? Because I think what it sounds like is that your belief is that the referees are beyond blaming for anything. Is, you know, from my point of view, I know what you're saying about my attitude towards referees. My feeling would be you're finding it difficult to handle the criticism of referees because you're so close to it, right? I just think as a whole, I think that's the thing, right? It's not. I mean, the thing is that the decisions are there, right? And now we've got them in. It is different to we hit the post a bunch of times because it's down to one person doing something wrong, right? The woodwork didn't move, the paint on the post didn't make the goal smaller. You know, none of those things happened. It was that if we hit the post 5 times, that's either bad news or crap finishing, right? Or bad luck or crap finishing. If it was a stonewall penalty that wasn't given as a penalty by the referee or VAR, or Luis Diaz's goal against Tottenham, where clearly onside, 4 people combined to not do their job properly, that's not bad luck. That's not, it wasn't our day. That's down to people making a mistake, and that mistake could be worth 60, 70 million pounds. It could be worth one person enjoying their week or hating their week, right? So yes, it's a mistake. People make mistakes, but you have to be able to handle the criticism when you make a mistake in every walk of life, not just refereeing, right? If I make a mistake at my job, I'll hold my hands up and go, I got it wrong. It was me. I made a mistake. When was the last time you heard any official ever do that? Never. I've never heard one official come out and go, I got it wrong. Say the same thing about every single mistake made by a player. They get the abuse. No, they do. That's the thing, right? They do get it. You know, how many black players have made a single mistake on a football pitch? Look at England and the penalties. I mean, it's insane. You miss a penalty and then you're abused for forever, in the worst possible way. You know, that's the thing, is everybody does get criticism. Referees, the way it should be directed is different, right? I agree, there shouldn't be the abuse, but they should be able to be criticised. Nobody ever recognises that abusing a referee is bad. I've said it lots of times. Abusing anyone is bad, right? The point being is everything is set up to help referees not make those mistakes, right? That's the thing, is they've got the technology there to be used to not make those mistakes. Yet the mistakes are still getting made. Let's just go back. Let's use the Luis Diaz one as the example, right? Because it's the clearest and obvious one, the most clearest that I've ever seen, right? I didn't abuse anyone afterwards, but it was clear that if I made that mistake in my job, I'd probably be out of a job. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is you have to be able to level criticism at anyone in life. And ultimately, Alexa, stop. And ultimately, referees just happen to be in a very high profile role where that criticism could cost millions of pounds, people's livelihoods, all of those things. So yeah, I think there is an argument that the flip side of it is I've never heard a referee come out and say, I made a mistake. Ever. Great. So one mistake in your career is over. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is why should anyone make a mistake when VAR is around? Yeah, if I'm not doing my job properly, I get let go, right? That's what I'm saying, is whoever was at Stockley Park doing VAR for that Luis Diaz decision wasn't doing their job properly, right? It's a mistake, it happens. But if that mistake is bad enough, you lose your job. That's the key, is there has to be punishments for making mistakes so you don't make mistakes again. If you made one mistake, you'd be let go. To an extent, it depends what that mistake is, right? If I sent all of my client data to every one of my other clients' data or clients, I'd probably be let go. Right? If I'm the director of a company and I let my employee go out in a car that isn't roadworthy and they die, I'd probably go to prison. I'm not saying those two things are related, but I made a mistake. I didn't get the MOT, and then there was a reaction to that mistake, right? So ultimately, there has to be punishments for mistakes as well as, it's not nice, but I'm not saying that person should have been fired. What I'm saying is they should have been back on training. They should have been taken off VAR. They should have been moved down the leagues. They should have been put on disciplinary or whatever, because they made a mistake that is potentially going to cost people their livelihoods. Right? If that was a relegation battle, that could have been the difference between £100 million and not. Anyway, we've got to switch games. Thankfully, we won't have to talk about referees anymore. Look, to summarise, I don't think anyone should be abused. I do think people need to be held accountable for actions, and that goes for everything. And I think with referees, why can't referees come out after a game and say, I got it wrong? Graham Poll made one mistake, a bad mistake, and it finished his career because it was one mistake. Well, if it's big enough, that's the nature of anything in life. If that mistake is big enough, you will lose your livelihood or career, right? Every job. It's not just referees. Any job. Right, I've got to wrap up. I've got to save this. OLP, it's been a pleasure. Look, I think it's one of those things where some of it gets lost in translation. I know where you're coming from, and you're protective of the job that you did and the people who do that job, and I absolutely understand it. I don't fully understand it because I don't see it from the outside. Then you would get no more referees. My argument at this moment in time would be, do we need referees for the highest level? I appreciate not everyone's got VAR and all of those things, but do we need them? No, that's not the argument at all. Yeah, I think the point being is people make mistakes in every walk of life. Generally, those mistakes won't cost people their jobs and careers and everything else, but they do, right? Sometimes they do. That's the nature of it. And if you're going to be so good at your job that you are the pinnacle of that profession, you're still going to make mistakes, but they're going to be amplified 10,000% because you are at the top making the most important decisions about the most important things. Right? Would I have expected if Zidane headbutted whoever it was and didn't get sent off in that game, it was a yellow card rather than a red, would I expect that referee to referee again? Possibly, but at a very low level. Right? Because they made a mistake doing their job. When it's something as important as that, unfortunately, there isn't the room for the mistakes. They happen, but there isn't the room for them. Now they've got a chance not to make the mistakes because they've got the backup of VAR and we're not using it properly. It is what it is. It's just, unfortunately, that's a role where you're going to get scrutinized. And as long as people do it the right way, I'm okay with that. As long as the repercussions for getting things incorrect is there, as well as the support for getting things incorrect is there, then that's where we are. The only way it will change is education, people not caring as much about football, all of those things. Right, I've got to wrap up. We've got to move over and we're playing 2 Point Hospital where thankfully there are no offsides, no referees, not hospital, museum, no assistants. Oh no, there are assistants, crap. But we're going to wrap up. We're going to jump over to that. There you are. You just don't like them well enough. So advocate for change. Nah, I think it's a bit of everything, right? I think referees need to be protected. All of the officials at football matches need to be protected, like stewards, like everybody else. But they also need to be criticised when they haven't done things correctly. Now, that's just the nature of every single job, every single thing you do in life. You can be criticised. It's not wrong to be criticised for making a mistake. It's how do you react to a mistake, right? Is always the most important thing in everything you do. Equally, having the PGMOL come out and say, we got it wrong, that would be fine as well, right? At least it would be transparent. It's one of those things. And be a group about it. Don't come out and go, they got it wrong. We got it wrong. Anyway, OLP, I've got to go. Thank you so much for sticking around. I appreciate it. And again, these things are things that I don't think people will ever necessarily agree on, especially if you've been involved in refereeing. I think it's a different world entirely when that's the case. But as always, I do appreciate you being around. I'm going to head over to 2 Point Museum. So if you want to head over there, then please do. If you're watching the VODs, thank you so much. The videos will be up on YouTube as always. We're heading into whatever next for England. I've got no idea what comes after this. A final potentially, which it looks like we're heading towards, if not already qualified for. Let's just have a little look. So we've got Sweden. Sweden could still overtake us. So we've got a big game away coming up, which could be a tough one. What's the goal difference? 12-9. Okay, could be an interesting one. Thank you so much. I'll see you again soon.